Temple Grandin is a woman with autism who has been advocating for people with autism since the mid-1980s by giving speeches and writing books. She took a stand against autism stereotypes, such as lack of communication, anger issues, and a more difficult time learning than the average student. She proved that people with autism can specialize in a certain area of work because of their different ways of thinking. Grandin leaves a legacy of improving the techniques used to educate children with autism, as well as educating all on the positive aspects of autism. Temple Grandin was born 4 years after Leo Kanner, child psychiatrist, first proposed the idea of autism in 1943. Before autism had been identified as a disorder, there were institutions for people with autism-like behavior and actions. People with autism in these asylums were stereotyped and not given credit for their intelligence. Children with autism were removed from their parents because society thought that it was the parents' fault that the child had autism. When Leo Kanner started to study autism, he observed 11 children and saw that they all had difficulty coping with specific senses and with social interactions. In 1944, Hans Asperger studied a different group of children. Although many of the results of his research were the same as Kanner's, there were differences proving that they studied two different disorders. After the information of Kanner and Asperger was published, there was still little change in the medical community. People with autism were diagnosed with brain damage or other diseases when they should have been diagnosed with autism. Temple Grandin was diagnosed with brain damage when she was 2 years old, but when she was in her mid-teens, her mother read a checklist by the founder of the Autism Research Institute, Dr. Bernard Rimland, and based on this, diagnosed Temple with autism. When Grandin was in high school, she spent the summer on her aunt's ranch in Arizona. It was there that she learned how well she could relate to cows. Like cows, she thinks in a series of images that flash through her mind. When she watched cattle being vaccinated, she noticed that a special device helped calm them down by squeezing their sides. Grandin tried the device out for herself and found it relaxing. She spent that summer creating what she called the squeeze machine. With the pull of a string, the sides of the device would press against her body, calming her down. When she went to college, the staff didn't like her squeeze machine and made her conduct a test, proving that it really helped relax people. While testing her machine, she realized that she wanted to become a scientist. After graduating, Grandin visited a slaughterhouse and, seeing the harsh conditions there, decided to design a cow chute that would make the cattle more comfortable as they went through. After testing the chute, ranchers realized it made the cows more relaxed, made the process easier, and made the meat taste better. This invention gained Temple Grandin the attention from which to start to speak on autism. Grandin was one of the first people with autism with a successful career to speak out for autism rights. When professors, co-workers, and peers learned that Temple Grandin was on the autism spectrum, they immediately downgraded her abilities. Grandin grew up in her own lane and had a way of thinking that only she could understand. In the mid-1980s, she started to speak in public on autism at the request of Ruth Sullivan, founder of the Autism Society of America, a leading grassroots autism organization. Because Temple Grandin had supporters from her work with livestock, the society thought she would be a good representative for their cause. Grandin spoke to educate all people on what autism is. She spoke directly to people with autism, encouraging them to come out and accept being autistic.
When she is on stage, she comes alive with her stories, and she is funny as the day is long, and she is such an excellent communicator. And the reason why she's good is that she can really thoughtfully explain what it's like to be in her brain.
Although medical diagnoses had improved greatly in the 1970s, there were still many stereotypes about the actions of people with autism. In Grandin's speeches, she took a stand against these stereotypes and also supported early autism intervention and teacher assistance. She said that early intervention for children with autism would bring them support so it would be easier for them to thrive and cope with autism.
If we wait for a child to fall very far behind in their communication skills, their social skills, and their academic skills, then we're having to play catch up. And we'll probably never be able to achieve the outcome of getting them back on track with everyone else. But if we get it if we find it really early and we help them from very early on with the building blocks that all children need to be successful, we may prevent them from really falling ever very far behind everyone else.
She supported laws like the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act of 1990. This law required public schools to have special education programs that focused on individuals with mental disorders. Grandin also encouraged people with autism to accept who they were and consider autism a benefit instead of a weakness. People with autism were often labeled negatively, and Grandin took a stand against this stereotyping. In 1986, Grandin wrote the book, Emergence Labeled Autistic, to educate others on what autism is, what it means to be autistic, and what it is like to be autistic. Early on, even many doctors would immediately judge patients with autism based on their initial interactions with them because they didn't understand autism. Grandin was able to speak from the experience of working with cattle ranchers who had treated her badly because of the way she acted. She started to educate others on autism in hopes of eliminating these stereotypes.
I think it's really important people to show what they can do. When I did my original cattle projects back in the 70s, one of the things that motivated me, I wanted to prove I could do it. Just prove I could do it.
When Temple Grandin spoke about the benefits of autism, some people with autism didn't agree with her. Grandin had support from her family and money for education, and because of these advantages, some people with autism thought she couldn't represent the whole spectrum. Older people with autism didn't grow up with support groups, and in their time, states lacked funding for people with disabilities and disorders. Also, they thought they couldn't benefit now from Grandin's ideas about how autism should be appreciated. However, Grandin kept speaking, and she was able to get support from the Autism Society of America. Shortly after the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act of 1990 became a law, the number of students with autism enrolled in public schools started to rise. In special education programs went from none to 5,415 in 1 year. In the following year, that number tripled. Students with autism were able to get more support as individuals, not just as people with autism. This was a step away from discriminating against mental disorders and was a big leap towards autism appreciation. Temple Grandin's public speaking and books, along with other advocates such as the Autism Society of America, inspired teachers and parents to explore new styles of teaching children with autism. There was more early intervention for children with autism, and teachers were given support methods. Teachers were trained to teach children through special verbal and sensory activities because of Grandin's knowledge in these areas. Because of Grandin's influence, people obtained a better understanding of what autism really meant. As of the end of 2015, many states had created committees to address autism needs and policies. Public schools across the country started to identify children on the spectrum and give them special services. New schools have since been founded, where the main focus is children with autism. The Temple Grandin School, founded by Jen Wilger in 2011, focuses mainly on children who have not met special needs services in schools but still require extra attention to learn.
I want to see kids that are different be successful. One of the things I think is one of the most important things for kids, ADHD, dyslexic, mild autism, is that they find something they can turn into a career.
Because Grandin advocated for the education of children with autism, this school is an example of a community she influenced when she took a stand. Grandin still has many conferences and does speeches every year, working to improve the lives of people with autism. Temple Grandin visited her aunt's farm, where she found a connection to cattle, launching her into a career of slaughterhouse improvements. After gaining respect from her work with livestock, Grandin started to do speeches on autism, taking a stand against autism stereotypes and educating America on what it means to be autistic. She inspired parents and teachers to teach children with autism in a different style and improve the treatment of people with autism. Temple Grandin gave a voice to people who never had a voice before.
I'm just a child of nature. I don't need much to set me free.